Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome to the WordPress Montclair meetup. Today we have Jeff Marx speaking about from abilities to action, wiring AI into WordPress. He asked me to tell a little bit about GatherPress, the open source project we both work on. It is an event management open source software in WordPress. It manages events and does a lot of the capabilities that Meetup does. And Jeff has been working on a special project in GatherPress, which involves the Abilities API and AI. So without further ado, Jeff, come on up, get us started.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, so as Mike said, we're going to be talking about the Abilities API and wiring AI into WordPress. And I guess before I start, I want to just kind of say that throughout this talk, I'll be referring to ChatGPT a lot. But in actuality, you can use any model the way the API client is set up, the AI client set up. You can use any model, including like Gemini, Claude, or whichever model you might prefer. But just for the purposes of this talk, I'm just going to refer to ChatGPT, so we can just assume that's a model. So, all right, so I don't know about you guys, but ChatGPT and just AI in general has become a big part of my life. Like, I just use it for everything from checking the weather to recipes to, making plans for the weekend. So it's become a very it's become a big new technology in our lives that I think we're all using. But one thing it can't do, at least without our help, is write to your database. It can't upload images to your file system. It can't actually execute your WordPress functionality, because if you have a WordPress plugin, you work with a WordPress plugin, or just any WordPress functionality in general, sometimes you want to be able to use AI to run, to execute your functions, and that's what the Abilities API really allows us to do. And in this presentation, we'll walk through a couple instances where we can kind of harness that power and use it to make our lives easier with our complicated WordPress functions. All right, so yeah, like Mike said, my name is Jeff Marx, full-time software engineer at People Inc. It's People, but the umbrella company for People Magazine, which used to be on WordPress but isn't anymore. We're on homegrown CMS, which I know is weird, but yeah, I've been rooted in the WordPress community since about 2006. Like I said, long-time WordPress guy, yeah, I've been doing these meetups and participating in Mike's meetups, helping organize WordCamp Montclair, and now I'm assistant organizing the WordPress New York City meetup groups, which we meet once a month for happy hours. If you'd like to join, please see me after. And also, as Mike said, I'm a longtime GatherPress contributor. We've been working on this open source event management software for a long time, and that will be the basis of this presentation. And of course, I'm a card-carrying member of the Bills Mafia, right, Mike? We all go Bills. And that actually will come into play in this presentation. I just say that for no reason.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Mike loves it when I work the Bills into my talks. Okay, so what is the Abilities API? All right, so on a high level, it basically does exactly what I was saying before. It really allows AI to kind of talk to and execute our WordPress code, which also needs WP AI client, which we'll go into more later. But the Abilities API just basically allows you to map map a language model directly to your WordPress logic, so you can execute any functionality on your plugin just by bypassing the user interface and just using a prompt. So for an example, we have in GatherPress create event. That's probably our main function, our base function. That was probably the first function. I mean, even before I joined the team, was probably the first function that created. And as you can imagine, create event is a PHP function that does a lot of things. It uses other functions, creates the events, updates the database, does a lot of things. And normally, to run that function, you'd use all of our UI tools. And And basically the Abilities API will allow us to just basically say a prompt and just do that without doing anything on the UI, which is a great innovation, I think. So yeah, it was merged into core. The Abilities API was merged into core 6.9 in December of 2025. I started playing with it in around September, October or so, and just basically just started playing with it, and of course 6 months later, I was working on a WordPress ticket, and I think I was looking at Slack and seeing some Abilities API headlines come up and some links, and I just started seeing if I could experiment with it and get it working on GatherPress, like one ability, and like 5-6 months later, whatever it is, I have a pretty, robust version, almost hopefully ready soon to be merged into GatherPress core. And like I said, you basically store your methods as items. It's like a registry, but we'll look at that in a second. So like create event will be like an item in a registry, and it is dependent on the WP AI client, which is not part of core yet, and we'll go more into that later. And I put in a couple links here about diving deeper into the Abilities API with some links that are helpful if you want to learn more about it. Okay, so let's walk through the code, like an actual ability, the one I just referred to. So this is a create event ability, and if you look at the code, hopefully you can all see it, and I'll see the lines. I don't know, code in presentations is always hard. But so WP register ability is the main function that's introduced with this Abilities API. And if you look at this code, it should, and you've been a developer, a WordPress developer it really should look very familiar to you. Like it's the same kind of code that you'll see for custom post types, custom taxonomy. You're basically adding something else to the registry besides all these other things that you have. So let's kind of walk through it. So WP register ability, and then you have GatherPress create event. GatherPress is the namespace, and create event is the actual ability. Then the label is self-explanatory create event. The category is also self-explanatory event. Now this is where it gets a little interesting. So anytime you've had code like this for custom post type or taxonomy, the description really just kind of sits there and describes what your custom post type or taxonomy is. In this case, the description is actually starting to interact with the AI agent. So if you look at the description carefully, it says create a new event with a title, date, time, and an optional venue, and events are created as drafts by default for review. And that is actually a rule that we're gonna send to the AI agent or to the language model before it even starts like executing your code, which is kind of a cool little thing that you can start like sending in those rules before it starts running the code. And now we're gonna look at the meat and potatoes of it. So, and this, if it doesn't make sense right now, it'll make sense as we go along. So this is the input schema, and this is basically what the model is gonna look for. It's gonna look for these items in your prompt. So let's say the input schema is, we have 3 properties. We have a title, which is basically the title of the event, the start, which will be the time when the event starts, and the venue ID, which is, of course, where it's gonna take place. But keep that in mind that we're actually looking for a venue ID and not a venue, which is kind of interesting. So, and we'll come back to that in a second. And of course, required, we require a title and a start time, and if the prompt doesn't see that, ChatGPT will kind of yell at you and be like, I need a title or start time. So all these things kind of build up into giving ChatGPT rules. And I did want to point this out before we move on. The permission callback is super, super important, because if you see this code as return current user can edit post. So what this does, it makes sure that who's ever executing this ability is someone who has a proper permission to create events. So I just wanted to call this out, because if you don't have this permissions checked, you're really going to leave your site open for some security problems or to get hacked. I think if you're vibe coding, if you use ChatGPT to write your code, or if you have a Cursor or Windsurf connected, AI infused, it's really important to make sure they don't leave this out, because the last thing you want to do is leave your abilities unprotected so that anyone can run prompts, hack into your database, delete your content, do whatever they want, steal personal information, all that stuff. So that's important. And then finally, it does the execute callback, which will actually execute this create event, which again, like I said before, runs the same code you would run that would be run if someone creates an event using the user interface. And oh, and by the way, this is actually a very condensed version of it. If you download the slides, I put a link to the full code if you want to see the full thing. There are actually more input schema items. There are more things you can include, but I really, for the purposes of the talk, want to give you a concise version of it. And that's just one ability. These are all 11 abilities we are utilizing as part of, to make GatherPress fully work. We have, you can see all of them. We have create event is the one we looked at, but then we have, update event and create venue, update venue. Not only are we creating, we're updating things, and all the abilities cover all that and interact with the prompts. And then there's a couple different ones, calculate dates and list venues and list events, but we'll get through all that. But I just wanted to show you that that was just one ability that we started with, but we actually have 11 of them now. So, all right. So before we go through this, I want to, fully explain that the WP AI client, which is not in core yet, it is a programmatic client that kind of takes messages and that will interpret your prompt and send message and go back and forth with ChatGPT to make this happen. So that will be merged into core, hopefully with 7.0, but it is important that the AI client has to interact with the Abilities API to make these things happen. So, okay, so let's walk through this prompt and see what happens. So the prompt says, create a Buffalo Bills watch party this Sunday at 1 p.m. at Dylan Murphy's. And the WP AI client will take that prompt and all 11 abilities. So it'll take that prompt and gather all 11 of these abilities, and it will send that, all that information to ChatGPT. ChatGPT will then interpret the prompt and look for an ability to match with. So it will say, create a Buffalo Bills watch party this Sunday at 1 p.m. at Dylan Murphy's. Okay, that clearly looks like we're creating an event. So now it knows we can match this with create event. And then what it's going to do is going to look at our input schema items. So let's go back and take a look at those again. The title, the start, and the venue ID. So then it'll say, okay, Buffalo Bills watch party, easy, that's the title. That's an easy one. This Sunday at 1 p.m., all right, I can do a little thinking and determine that could be a PHP timestamp and figure out when this Sunday is, what date it is, and at 1 p.m. and come up with a timestamp. Then ChatGPT is going to get a little thrown off. It'll start doing ChatGPT things. It'll say, okay, I see Dylan Murphy's. Now that looks like a venue, but it looks like the name of the venue, but really the input schema item said I should be looking for an ID. So I'm a little confused, and it'll kind of go back and forth a little bit, and then it'll basically just say, I need more information. And it will send that information back to the client. And the client will search the database for a venue named Dylan Murphy's using another ability we have, the list venue ability, and it'll find that venue ID and send that venue ID back to ChatGPT. And ChatGPT will say, okay, great, I have everything I need. I have the venue ID and all the other input schema items, and then it'll take that payload and send it back to the client. And then the client will kind of execute all this code one by one. It'll say, use the ability, here's a description, title, start, venue ID. Now it'll slot in Bill's watch party, the start time, the venue ID into all its proper slots, and then it'll make sure the right user is executing it. Then it'll actually run the code, and that is just all this back and forth between ChatGPT and the client. And really, I know that was a lot, but you can really think about it. You can think about this interaction, and this is all happening under the hood, with code. But you can really think about it as like a customer ordering a meal at a restaurant. So let's say a customer sits down at a table and orders a steak, and the waiter, in this case, will be the client. Will take that order, write it down on a little pad, and kind of run it back into the kitchen and tell the chef, who will be the language model in this case. And the chef will be like, okay, yes, I have a steak, I can make that. But then they'll be like, oh, maybe do they want cooked rare? Do they want sides of this? So that's another thing the waiter would have to gather from the customer, and that would act as our input schema items. Do they want a rare steak? Do they want mashed potatoes on the side? So then they take that back to the chef, and the chef will might have questions, say, oh, he wants medium rare, does he really want rare or medium rare? And then he might tell the waiter to go back to the customer to kind of clarify that. So all that back and forth is exactly what happens and how WordPress, uses a client to interact with language models, with a few bells and whistles if they're in. So anyway, it'll run that code, and then ChatGPT will respond with a success message. Either your event was created successfully or an error message, and then of course it will actually create the event. After all that, and it all happens very fast. But this is just kind of how it all happens. And I included a link to the code to actually get, if you actually want to see how that all works. And I have a demo set up, and I did it through. I just want to record a video because I'm not brave enough to. Sorry, black glasses on. Right, let me. Okay, can you see that okay? All right, so let's just say here's a prompt that says, please create a Buffalo Bills watch party on September 12th, 2026 at Dylan Murphy's. And this time I included the address because we're actually going to create the event. We're going to create the venue on the fly at 1 p.m. with the sports watching topic assigned. So we're going to include a custom taxonomy item there. And now we're going to attach an image. It's my favorite image is Tim Russert wearing a Bills uniform. And then we're going to send. And now what's happening is while we see this interface I created, it's connected to the WP Client API, and it's doing all the things that we just looked at. It's the WP client. The WP AI client is communicating with the language model while all this is happening, and it's doing all the things, it's creating the venues, and instead of doing all this in the UI, it's all just being done right here, which is pretty cool. So, this is actually a real place that I go to and watch Bills games. So here it is. The event's been created, and we just kind of look through. The Buffalo Bills watch party has been created as a draft, like we told it in its rules, to not actually create a live event. And it just lists a venue, the date and time, and the topic that it assigned. And the way I have it set up, it does list the actions taken that I have. You can see list topics, create topic, and it created the event. And let's take a look at the venue to make sure it created that properly. And we see the map is pointed properly. And then the actual event, which looks good. We have the map and the image in place and the sports watching topic assigned, and then we publish it. And there we go. So we just saved a lot of time doing that via prompt versus the UI. And that's not to say that the UI for WordPress is not great, but doing it this way is way faster. So, okay.
I think it's way faster, especially when, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it was way faster, especially when you use the idea of you want to create more than one event.
Well, yeah. So you're jumping up. Yeah. So we saw the idea. So that saved us some time. Instead of all of our plugins have maybe some cumbersome UI processes, so that saved us some time. But as you just alluded to really harness the power of AI, I'm not gonna show you how we actually do. We're gonna create multiple events with one prompt. So let's take a look at that one. Right. So yeah, now we'll go to the AI assistant, and here. So that prompt is basically very similar to what we had before, but it says, please create Buffalo Bills watch parties on the next 3 Sundays at Dylan Murphy's, including the address again, starting at 1 p.m. with the sports watching topic assigned. And then, of course, the Tim Resser.
So this is going to make 3 events. On
Yes,
Sunday.
exactly. So yeah, then we hit the send. It's doing the same thing it was doing before, but of course it's doing it 3 times over for each one, and calculating the next 3 Sundays at the same time, which is another just great thing that ChatGPT can do is work with dates, and we'll talk more about that later too. And with the image, it'll include the image on all 3 of them. So in this case, we're saving a lot of time doing 3 at once instead of like having to go through the UI 3 times, you know, just duplicating the same thing. So we have the ChatGPT ghosty dots, and it's doing its thing, bop it up it up. And this one, these can take a little while, the ones that are a little more complicated when you do multiple events at once. But you can see, I'm not gonna click on each one, but it said the Buffalo Bills watch parties have been created for drafts for the next 3 Sundays, and I can tell you that the 3 dates they have listed here are the right dates relative to when I actually, you know, did that prompt. And it basically did the same thing, you know, it just did it 3 times over. So now you can kind of see the power of this. So if you are an event manager and you have a plugin that's GatherPress or similar to GatherPress, and you want to do multiple events at once, you can just do them. You can do them in bulk now, and that's when AI starts to get very powerful and will save you time. Okay. All right, so now just to go back to the AI client. So, yeah, the AI client is basically just like I said, and I can't go back to that restaurant example where the AI client is basically the courier and will handle all that communication. The Abilities API, to understand, really just sits there and allows you to map create event to create event, like create event, you know, ability to function. And the AI client is what actually does the running back and forth. And it is not merged into Core yet. I expect it will be merged into Core actually sometime in early April, because they're still kind of working out some of the details of it. So it's really hard to include too much of it in this talk since it's not merged yet. And there's a lot of features on it coming out that, you know, we really just don't know the full capabilities of it yet. So I only wanted to touch on the AI client here. And yeah, so the Abilities API stores methods, and like I said, the client does the communication with the language model. And the other things that the AI client does, it will handle the developer piece. So one thing you need to know before you do any of this is that this is not free. So what I did for ChatGPT is I went to ChatGPT's developer platform, got an API key, and I have to attach the API key to my credit card, and it does charge me for every prompt. Now, bear in mind that each prompt is usually ranging from half a penny to like a penny and a half or 2 pennies for the really heavy ones. And I wouldn't stress too much about that, because I feel like I'm working currently on the GatherPress implementation to figure out how to make the cost really low or just free, because I really feel like this Olama is another model that's open source that maybe we could possibly do it for free. But I feel like if you're running a plugin and you spend a lot of time doing things in that plugin, that I think I've run like 1,000 prompts on this or something like that, and the grand total of my cost has been like $10 or something. So I wouldn't worry too much about the cost, especially want to get in there and see the power of it and see how much time it'll save you. And the conversation loop. So the conversation loop is just something I added on top of the AI client, which really allows us to do some cool things. So that back and forth that we saw, where the AI client had like go back from the prompt back to the client and back to the language model, is done because I put in a little conversation loop. Right now, the AI client does not offer that out of the box, but I feel like it'll be part of the roadmap. It'll probably happen at some point. I put in a couple links here to the WP AI client, and it runs a PHP AI client, which is the SDK, the PHP SDK under the hood. If you're interested in learning more about these, I have actually been sitting in on the members with the core AI team members, as they were preparing to release this. And I actually did some code for the AI client and found a couple bugs and reported to him and been helping him test it. So hopefully we'll get that out, and hopefully we'll get that out to the public soon. And just to take a closer look at that admin page, my little AI assistant that you saw is just, there's nothing really complicated here. This is just basically, a lot of HTML markup using jQuery, which I know Mike is not crazy about, but I really just was throwing this together to get something working and get something functional to show what can be done. So yeah, it's basically just a lot of jQuery and like text areas and a place to upload your files. And yeah, nothing crazy complicated, but the magic part of it is connecting all the tools that I'm importing from the AI client, which allows me to send prompts, send messages, send message parts, upload images. If you go look at the code in this sample here, you'll kind of see all the things I import from the AI client to make that happen. And also, it's important to note that like I said, out of the box, we're doing a lot of funky things with GatherPress that can't really be done with the AI client out of the box. So, but you can look at our code and try to see if you can replicate it. And I guess just one more thing to walk through is the stateful prompt. So kind of going back to our first example, that one-off that we did, like create that initial Buffalo Bills watch party. So what you can do is, with the AI client and some of the tools and some custom programming, is say, after you create that Bills watch party at Dylan Murphy's Sunday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., you might say to yourself, maybe we want that to extend to 6 o'clock because the game ends at 4 o'clock and people will drink for a while afterwards. So after we create this event, you can do, please update the end time to 6 p.m. Now, this is actually pretty powerful. It's just one quick sentence. But if you don't have stateful prompts enabled, you'll say, please update the end time to 6 p.m. ChatGPT will please update the end time to what? I don't know what you're talking about. So stateful prompts is part of the conversation loop where you can kind of store all the messages that you've had and send it back to the ChatGPT so it knows what the end time, what to update. So it knows that you're talking about this event. So when you continue a ChatGPT-like conversation, you can keep referring to the same thing and it'll know what you're talking about. And that's another thing that we're just like touching on with the AI client, and we'll go deeper when I do a talk on the AI client. And yeah, one thing, like system prompts is also something powerful. So you can set up a lot of rules for your AI client that exists outside of abilities, because you saw earlier in the description of the ability, we set up some rules that were executing just for the creative event abilities. But these system prompts, if you want to take a look at it, I of course again link to the code. You can see that we can put in a whole lot of rules that are just, and each one of them doesn't really matter, but you'll find that when you work with this stuff, you're gonna run into problems. AI is not gonna do exactly what you think it's gonna do. So these system prompts kind of allow you to give some guidance. Like you say, the images are provided with create event. The request images will be automatically attached to the event. Don't ask the user if they want to attach the images. It really doesn't matter. You're just telling AI exactly how to customize your experience. And the fact that we can do this with English, wrapped in a system prompt, to me, it's, is very powerful. So you can put a lot of these rules in to kind of tell AI exactly what to do before it does it. And just wrapping up here, so one thing you can do, this was a lot. I know it was a lot of code and maybe, if you want to just do something easy, you can go download this AI experiment plugin. And this is kind of what the core team is using to test out the abilities that they are working on. They have a few different abilities in there, as you can see. They have title generation, content summarization, image generation, alt text generation, These are the abilities that they have been working on, are including in the Experiments API. But not only can you experiment with their abilities, you can write your own ability. So if you want to take a look at the code that I had on that second slide and start to kind of work on your own ability, and you want to just do something really simple, and you don't want to build that heavy, that interface that I built, with the AI Experiments plugin will allow you to run that, to create an ability and run prompts without, they'll have their own little chat assistant that's not as sophisticated as mine, but at least not yet. But you'll be able to do that stuff. So if this is something that's interesting to you and you want to start experimenting with it, I would start with this plugin. All right, that's pretty much all I got. Here's how you can get in touch with me. Is my LinkedIn, and then you can find me on GatherPress Slack if you want to join our Slack and actually help me with this process, because we are looking for help. It's an open source software, and if you want to help, come work on this big PR I've been working on, or do any other GatherPress things, please find us on here, and we'll be happy to talk to you. If you want to help test this isn't just for developers. If you want to help test it, if you want to give feedback, please feel free to do that. And then I'm jmark75 on the Make WordPress chat, and of course just another link to GatherPress and another campaign. Please join us, and please continue to support the WordPress Montclair meetup by my good friend Mike. And with that, I'll take some questions. Thank you.
I actually have a question, Jeff.
Okay.
So I saw you have an image upload, and that's really cool that you can tie it to it. Is there any way that AI can manipulate that image with the upload, or even generate an image for the feature image, or is that something you thought about, or?
Yes. It is not something I have done, but it has been something I've thought about, and I did a little research, and I think on that Experiments plugin, there is an image. They do include that ability. So I do think that's the other thing we could probably do especially for GatherPress, is I can take that image generation ability and we could just stick it into GatherPress. So we can, so I feel like maybe you just gave us something to probably work on in text. Yeah, I mean, to just have a prompt and say, create this Bill's, watch party promo image. Yeah.
Cool. Squish the fish. You have
Exactly. No, and AI will get sassy. AI will, if you ask AI, that's another powerful thing with this tool, is if you ask AI to come up with a description, it'll say, come up with a fun description. It'll say, come gather to watch the Bills take on the Dolphins with the Rockin' Bills fans at Dylan Murphy's, be a member of the Bills Mafia. If you just say, come up with a fun description, it'll just go off and do something cool. And you can say, please come up with a boring description. They'll just say, Bills watch event at Dylan Murphy's. You can just do all these things and play around with it. It's a lot of fun.
I'm good.
Do you have any more?
Good job.
Cool. Yeah, no, it was great. Thanks again, Jeff.
Thank
We
you.
look forward to seeing how this project evolves. So let's give him
Yeah,
a round of hand. Let's give him a hand.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.